Good evening. How's everybody doing? That song, it's Josh Warshawski singing a verse, a rafal, from Psalm 97, clouds and firm. Wait, let me get this quote. It was so good, that verse. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Yeah, clouds and the firmament surrounding justice and righteousness are the foundation of the divine throne. A consuming fire bursts forth. Psalm 97, verses 2 and 3. Yeah, I didn't plan that the next song on Josh's album that we're coming to would come tonight on this key DAF, but of course there's no accidents, and that's perfect. How's everybody doing? Let's light up the darkness. This is a special page of the Talmud tonight. We're deep in this, mystical section of Tractate Chagigah, the 13th volume of the Talmud. We're in chapter 2. The Gemara's on Mishna number 1 here in chapter 2. And tonight we come to one of the most famous stories in the Talmud, For Enter the Orchard. Really looking forward to sharing this page with you. Who is with us as we get it going on a cold Wednesday night here in Los Angeles? It's pretty cold here. Our heating broke last night. It was so cold in the house. They can't repair it until tomorrow. I'm in the office where we do have some heating, but, a bit of a shiver. But, we'll just be huddled under the blankets until we can get it fixed tomorrow. Obviously, it's not so bad for us in LA as if we had the same problem in the East or the North. I know you guys have it much colder than we do. We've gone soft in LA. All right, who's with us? Renee in Indiana, Paula in Chicago, Shandora in the Bronx, Bella in Florida, Nancy in North Carolina, Stephen in New Hampshire, Yehudit in South Carolina, John in Sedona, Bill in mid-Missouri, PK in Colorado, Sharon in New Jersey, David in Indiana, Karen in Northern California, Elvis in Geneva, New York, Pauline in Arkansas, PK loves the music, Lucy in Minnesota, James in Indianapolis, Paul in the Great Northwest, What's News says hi, Annie in Michigan, What's News' real name is Ruth, Rebecca in LA, Carrie in Santa Clarita, is that just a C got left off and it's Santa Clarita? Adam in Fort Myers, Florida, Belle is here with us. And Annie says, good time to study when it's cold. Amen. Aoife over there on the YouTube side, checking in from Florida. Welcome, everyone. Tonight's episode of AT Daily, sponsored by my good friend AJ Stern, in honor of Sal and the Accidental Talmudist community. I'm going to add also for a healing, a member of our community, Yosef Michal, Ben Yehudis Shoshana. We should only hear good news and a complete healing for Yosef Michal. And AJ, may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. We thank you and we say amen, and we thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. Let's get into this key DAF. Man, this is a good one. The story about the four who enter the orchard comes at the very end of the page, but the whole journey that we'll take there is colorful, memorable in the extreme. We pick it up at the bottom of page 13b here in Tractate Chagigah, chapter 2. Still discussing Mishna number 1. The Gemara asks, from where does this river flow? So we've been getting a hint, right? These topics can't be elaborated in detail. The mystical secrets of Torah are only for the initiated, as it were. But here in the Talmud, the rabbis give us some hints, and those who have studied on their own and have grown in wisdom will take more from these hints than those who have not. So yesterday we left off and we were talking about the array of angels surrounding the Holy One, blessed be He, as He, occupies that space in the uppermost realm. It's not a physical space. It's not a place above, below. Forget 3 dimensions. but that highest of the spiritual realms where God sits and he's surrounded by angels. And the sages were arguing, how many angels? Is it 1,000, 10,000, millions, hundreds of millions? Are they without number? And the sages have been talking about, well, we get hints from the Bible, and according to certain verses, we can suggest some of the numbering of the angels and where they are and what they're doing. So at the end of yesterday, we were talking about that, well, really the angels around the Holy One, blessed be He, are innumerable, but, a huge number of them tend to this river, the river Dinur. As it is stated, a fiery river issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to it, and a myriad myriads stand before it. From Daniel 7:10. The ministers of God are too numerous to count, but this huge number tend to this river. So what does that mean? The Gemara asks, from where does this river flow? And the Gemara answers, from the perspiration of the divine creatures. Obviously, everything here is metaphoric. The Talmud is not suggesting that the angels sweat, right? But something about being in the presence and the fire of the Holy One causes them to give off some kind of a liquid, and it forms a river. From the perspiration of the divine creatures. And where does this river flow to? Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said that Rav said, upon the heads of the wicked in Gehenna. Right, that this river, this kind of offshoot of the heavenly realm, ends up flowing onto the heads of the wicked who are in Gehenna. So Gehenna is a place where most of us, sadly, will spend some time after we leave this world, sort of being refined and cleansed of the sins we weren't able to atone for or make up for with all of our good deeds that we did in this world. But Gehenna is also a place where the wicked will find a permanent abode in the next life. The truly wicked, the hugely wicked, the irredeemably wicked, which is actually a very small percentage of the people. And Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said, the river flows over those who were snatched away, i.e. the generations that were never created. So souls that were conceived, as it were, in the mind of God, but did not find life in this physical world. So what is he talking about? The river flows over those who were snatched away, i.e. the generations that were never created. As it is stated, Job 22:16, who were snatched away before their time, whose foundation was poured out as a stream, implying that the river Dinur flows over them. It is taught in a bereshis, Rabbi Shimon HaChassid said, in explanation of this verse, these people who were snatched away are those 974 generations that were snatched away. They were to have been created before the creation of the world, but they were not created. And the Torah was supposed to have been given 1,000 generations after the world was created. As it is written, he commanded his word for 1,000 generations, Psalm 105. But God gave the Torah earlier, after only 26 generations from the creation of Adam to the giving of Torah. So that 974 generations should have been created, but were not. As if God had this plan that there would be 1,000 generations who occupy this world, really long time, right? Because we were going to be much more idyllic creatures, right? Who could live a really long time if we'd been like Adam and Eve. But Adam and Eve showed the Holy One, blessed be He, that, these humans are problematic. They should live shorter lives. They can't be trusted to sort of occupy both this world and that world, which, Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, was a place where heaven and earth met, as it were. And therefore, the humans were diminished in capacity and spiritual standing and in length of days. And these 974 generations that were to live on earth before the Torah was finally given never happened, right? So these souls were created in some sense, but weren't given life. So the Holy One, blessed be He, acted by planting a few of these 974 generations, the people of those generations, in each and every generation since the giving of Torah. And who are these people from those lost generations who are interspersed among us? They are the insolent ones of the generation, as they belong to generations that should not have been created at all. Obviously, God, God may change his mind, but the divine plan, there's no before and after, past, present, or future for God. All of it is equally accessible to God. So, God's plans are eternal. It's not like he changed his mind. It was somehow that it was for our understanding that there were these 974 generations that were meant to be, but then they weren't. So maybe it should have been better that they wouldn't have been, but God, gave them some life anyway. And so who are they? They're the insolent ones among us. That is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon HaChassid. Diametrically opposed to his opinion is Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said that the verse, who were snatched, kumtu, Job 22:16, that it is written for a blessing. These who were snatched before their time, these 974 generations, they were removed from having that life before the Torah was given in this world for a blessing, as the verse is not referring to lowly, cursed people, but rather to the blessed. So who are these 974 lost generations that are people from those generations interspersed among us here in human history? Who are they? They are the Torah scholars who shrivel, mekamtin, i.e., they humble themselves over the words of Torah in this world. Right? These are great souls, great souls from these earlier time, kind of big, expansive souls. They come among us, but they're very humble, they're meek. They walk among us and they focus on the Lord, right? They focus on words of Torah. They don't reveal themselves as these great souls. Rather, they are humble and they pore over Torah in this world. And the Holy One, blessed be He, reveals a secret to them in the world to come. As it is stated, whose foundation, Yesodam, was poured out as a stream. So referring back to this river Dinur, implying that God will provide them with an abundant knowledge of secret matters, right? Since they came from that upper world, these are very special souls, they're able to access the upper realms, access mysticism in a way that the rest of us maybe are not able to. Shmuel said to Chia bar Rav, right? Chia, the son of Rav, son of great ones, come and I will tell you something of the great things that your father would say. Here's one. Each and every day, ministering angels are created from the river Dinur, and they recite song to God, and then immediately cease to exist. As it is stated, Lamentations 3:23, they are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, indicating that new angels praise God each morning. And the Gemara comments, and this opinion disagrees with that of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, because Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yonasan said, with each and every word that emerges from the mouth of the Holy One, blessed be He, an angel is created. As it is stated, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of His mouth all their hosts. So both opinions agree that new angels are created constantly. One says every day. The other opinion says every time the Holy One breathes, or every time the Holy One speaks, angels are created. And this is why we have this understanding in Judaism and in the Jewish tradition that there certainly are different kinds of angels. When we talk about the ministering angels, the archangels, the angels with names, those have been around for a long time and continue to be. But then there's also the heavenly host, right? These innumerable, nameless angels. All of them are angels, right? So malachim. And the word malach, it means messenger, right? So one way to understand angels is that any time God, speaks or wants something done, It's like, it's like there's a messenger package of will, of divine will, that goes out into the world to get something done, right? And that is an angel. That is another understanding of an angel, much less anthropomorphic, even if they have, wings and faces and legs and mouths, etc. But they're dispatched to fulfill God's will, right? So every time God wants something done, an angel is created and goes to do it. The Gemara continues to reconcile verses, as we started to do yesterday, that seem to contradict each other. One verse states, Daniel 7:9, his raiment was as white snow, and the hair of his head like pure white wool. And it is written in the Song of Songs, his locks are curled black as raven. Now, does God wear clothing? Does God have a white beard? Does God have, dark black curly hair? No, these are all anthropomorphic, sort of ideations from the humans through our prophets. So why would Scripture, assign these, humanoid characteristics to God, who is, without limit, infinite, where the whole universe is inside the tiniest speck of God's infinity? So why would we say that God has these qualities? It's to help us understand certain attributes of God. Okay, so in understanding attributes, why would the metaphors, as it were, contradict each other? That's what's being asked here. And so since these seem to contradict each other, the Gemara says, this is not difficult, la kasha. Here, the verse in Daniel is referring to when God is in the heavenly academy, while there in the verse in the Song of Songs, it speaks when he is at war. For the Master said, there is no finer individual to study Torah in an academy than an old man, and there is no finer individual to wage war than a youth. A different metaphor is therefore used to describe God on each occasion, right? And again, it's sort of from our perspective, right? So something we find often with the sages, that when we're learning Torah together, the divine presence is with us, right? God, the strong silent type, doesn't interfere, doesn't interrupt, but he's with us when we're learning Torah. And you can think about the kindest, sweetest, oldest, wisest one in creation right here with us. And when there's a war to be fought, and it's a righteous war, also the divine presence accompanies us there. And then when we might, ascribe this kind of more youthful, Shakespeare might say, the youth who seeks the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. God doesn't, need any further reputation, but he helps us build our courage when we must wage a holy war. The Gemara poses another question about reconciling verses. One verse states, his throne was fiery flames. That's also Daniel 7:9. And another phrase in the same verse says, till thrones were placed and one who was ancient of days sat, implying that there are two thrones. And the Gemara answers, la kasha, no difficulty. One throne is for God, and the other throne is for David, meaning King David. As it is taught in a bereshis with regard to this issue, one throne for him and one for David. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yosef HaGalilah said to him, Akiva, how long will you make the divine presence profane by presenting it as though one could sit next to the Holy One? Rather, the two thrones are designated for different purposes. God sits on both of them, but one he sits on for judgment, and the other he sits on for righteousness, tzedakah, right? Righteousness, charity, compassion. And the Gemara asks, did Rabbi Akiva accept this rebuff from Rabbi Yosef HaGalilah? Or did he not accept it from him? Now the Gemara offers a proof. Come and hear the following teaching from a different bereshis. One throne is for judgment and the other is for righteousness. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. So he must have accepted the rebuff. Rather than, first he said one throne is for God, the other for David. Later he said one throne, both for God, one for judgment, the other for righteousness. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said to him, Akiva, what are you doing occupying yourself with the study of Agadah? This kind of, storytelling, non-legal inquiry of the Talmud, as it were. This is not your field of expertise. Take, kelach, your words to the topics of plagues and tents. Meaning, it is preferable that you teach the halachos, the laws, of the impurity of tzara'as and the impurity of the dead, which are within your field of expertise. Rather, with regard to the two thrones, don't say that is one for judgment, one for righteousness. I'll tell you what they are. One throne is for a seat, and the other is for a small seat. Meaning, one seat is for God to sit on, and the small seat is for his footstool. As it is stated, the heavens are my seat, and the earth my footstool. Once again, anthropomorphic, right? What does it mean that God has a throne? That there's some location in the spiritual realm where God's glory is most intensely centered, right? And there he has, some kind of a lower pedestal or seat, on which he, sort of rests his feet, which is a little closer, a little more comprehensible to us who are even much further down the chain. The Gemara stated earlier that one who studies, now about this, here's a note from Rav Steinsaltz about this idea of Rabbi Akiva. Now, first, the great Rabbi Akiva, what was he so confused that he thought that King David, a mere mortal, even if he's a soul that returns to heaven, he's still a mere soul alongside God, and somehow he's going to have a throne that sits next to God? What? The commentaries explain that Rabbi Akiva did not mean that David's throne should be placed alongside that of the divine presence, the Shekhinah. Rather, Akiva was referring to a level of the divine presence entitled David, called David, right? Not King David, but rather an attribute of the Holy One, which is called David. It's almost like, some aspect of God that God lent to David. That's why maybe got that name, entitled David, and known in Kabbalistic terminology as Malchus, right? So if you're familiar a little bit with Lurianic Kabbalah, and it's older than that, but the idea of the 10 Sephiros, right, which are these channels through which God's blessing comes into our world. It's really the subject of another class, but there are 10, right? And not to go through all of them, but Keter, the crown, is the highest and the most incomprehensible for us. Then there's Chochmah and Bina, wisdom and understanding. Further down, there is a Chesed and Gevura, loving kindness and strict judgment. And then at the bottom of the Sephirotic tree, also known as the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life, we have Malchus, sovereignty, kingship, right? And it's sort of like one of the lowest levels of God, but is the highest above us, is sort of the sovereignty of God, and the sovereignty of God, which God extends to the sovereigns of this world. God takes a more hands-on approach to the lives and deaths and actions of rulers in this world, right? Whether they're kings or queens or presidents, etc., because their actions affect so many people in this world, God takes a little bit more hands-on approach to their lives. The Gemara stated, okay. So that's Malchus, majesty. And Rabbi Yossi the Galilean and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah are therefore referring to the same phenomenon. The former took issue with Rabbi Akiva only because he felt that his image calling one of the thrones David and his choice of words would invite a mundane and erroneous interpretation. According to this understanding, Rabbi Akiva was told that despite his knowledge of the design of the divine chariot, Merkava mysticism, that it would be inappropriate for him to expound on this matter as his listeners might misunderstand him. He's the great Akiva, maybe the greatest rabbi ever, right? Even Moses once visited Akiva's classroom and couldn't understand what he was talking about. But that's Akiva's expertise, is in expounding the law. It was even his expertise that led to codifying the Mishnah and which books would be included in the Bible, etc. But, in terms of expounding the mystical secrets, the other sages said to him, that's not for you. It's too easy for you, and in your use of language, you might confuse others. The Gemara stated earlier that one who studies the secrets of Torah must be a captain of 50 and a man of favor. Those are the attributes that are required for someone who would try to delve into mysticism. But it did not explain the meaning of these requirements. What does it mean that someone should have the attribute of being a captain of 50, the attribute of being a man of favor if he would study Merkava mysticism? So when Rav Dimi came from Israel to Babylonia, he said Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, cursed Israel with 18 curses. And his mind was not calmed, i.e. he was not satisfied, until he said to them the great curse of the following verse, Isaiah 3:5, the child shall behave insolently against the aged, and the base against the honorable. Now, why would Isaiah not feel settled or satisfied until he had cursed the Jewish people? Meaning, his job as a prophet was to warn us that, we were so far astray that we were going to lose the right to have the temple in our midst. And indeed it happened. The first temple was destroyed just as Isaiah prophesied. And while he was still warning us, he said so many terrible things are going to happen. And he listed 18 things, and he's like, he wasn't even satisfied until he said, and it's basically the whole world's going to be turned upside down. And the great ones among us will be laid low. The innocent, the righteous, the wise will all be laid low and will be ruled over by evil idiots, right? And the Gemara asks, well, what were these 18 curses? And the Gemara answers, as it is written, right? So this is Isaiah chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. What did Isaiah say? For behold, the Master, the Lord of hosts, shall take away from Jerusalem and from Judah, that portion of Israel which contains Jerusalem, the original portion of Israel given to the tribe of Judah, now called Judea, right? So he shall take away from Jerusalem and from Judah support and staff, every support of bread and every support of water, the mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet, the diviner and the elder, the captain of 50 and the man of favor, and the counselor and the cunning charmer and the skillful enchanter. And I will make children their princes, and babes shall rule over them. All of the worthy people would be taken from their positions of honor and authority, and they would be replaced by the uneducated and incapable of governing and leading. And that's the world that we wrought for ourselves through our misdeeds toward the end of that first temple period. And the Gemara proceeds to clarify the homiletical meaning of these terms. What do they mean? Support, right? These 18 things that would be taken away from the Jewish people. Support, these are the masters of the Bible. Staff, these are the masters of the Mishnah. People like Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema and his colleagues. And the Gemara interjects, Rav Papa and the rabbis disagreed with regard to this. One of them said they were proficient in 600 orders of Mishnah, and the other one said 700 of bread. We would that. These are the masters of Talmud, as it is stated, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine that I have mingled. Let me do a little reload of this screen here. Not a problem. I hope. Just checking. This is certainly not a time when I want any freezing to go on in our broadcast. Okay. Yes. Come, eat of my mingled. What else did Isaiah say we would lose? And every support of water. These are the masters of Agadah, the story-like aspects of the Talmud, who draw people's hearts like water by means of the Agadah. The mighty man. This is the master of the halachic tradition, the tradition of Jewish law, one who masters the halachas transmitted to him from his rabbis. And the man of war. This is one who knows how to engage in the discourse of Torah, generating novel teachings in the war of Torah. What a term. The war of Torah is something, it's like a war we go to fight every day. We have to bring all our courage and strength and training so that we can find new insights in Torah. The judge. This is a judge who judges a true judgment truthfully. The prophet, as it literally indicates, they would be removed also. A diviner. This is a king. Why is he called a diviner? For it is stated, a divine sentence is on the lips of the king. Proverbs 16. An elder. This is one fit for the position of head of an academy. And now the reason we're bringing this verse from Isaiah down, we said that one who would delve into mystical secrets must have the attributes of a captain of 50 and a man of favor. What is a captain of 50? Do not read it as Sar Hamishim, which means captain of 50. Rather, read it as Sar Chumashin, and this is one who knows how to engage in discourse with regard to the 5 books. Chamisha Chumsheh. The 5 books of the Torah, which when you have 5 books of the Torah that you use in synagogue to follow along with the commentary on the Torah, that's called a Chumash, from the word Chamishi, 5, Chamesh. So alternatively, a captain of 50 should be understood in accordance with what Rabbi Abahu said. For Rabbi Abahu said, from here we learn that one may not appoint a disseminator over the public to transmit words of Torah or teachings of the sages if he is less than 50 years of age. Whew, glad I'm 56. And the man of favor. This is one for whose sake favor is shown to his generation. Right? These are the Lamed Vav Tzadikim, right? The 36 saints in every generation for whom the world is permitted to continue to exist. There's so much evil among mankind, humankind, but at least in every generation, there's 36 totally righteous people, and for them, the world continues to exist. And even favor is shown to the generation. And the Gemara provides different examples of this. Some garner favor above, such as Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, whose prayers for his generation would invariably be answered. Others gain favor below. For example, Rabbi Abahu, who would plead Israel's case in the house of the Caesar. Right? He would go to Rome and say, these things that you're doing to the Jewish people, please stop. And he was so compelling, and his arguments and his grace were such that the Caesars would listen to him and have mercy on the Jews. The counselor, another one that what Isaiah said would be removed from the Jewish people because of our sins. This is referring to one who knows how to intercalate years and determine months due to his expertise in the phases of the moon and the calculation of the yearly cycle. The cunning. This is a student who makes his rabbis wise through his questions. The charmer, charashim. This is referring to one so wise that when he begins speaking matters of Torah, all those listening are as though deaf, chershin, as they are unable to comprehend the profundity of his comments. The skillful. This is one who understands something new from something else he has learned. Enchanter, lachash. This is referring to one who is worthy of having words of the Torah that were given in whispers, lachash, i.e. the secrets of the Torah transmitted to him. Right, so for the sages of the Talmud, the greatest loss that could befall the generation are its spiritual leaders who enable that generation to understand what God wants from us, what God wills for us, and all the blessings that God would rain on us if we could but connect to the Holy One, blessed be He. And the Gemara continues to interpret this verse, and I will make children their princes. Right? Children will rule over them. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of, and I will make children, ne'arim, like youth, not na'ar, I will make children, ne'arim, their princes. And Rabbi Lazar said, these are people who are devoid, menuarin, of mitzvahs. Such people will become the leaders of the nation. Right? What a sorry day would be for the Jewish people when people devoid of mitzvahs would become our leaders. and babes, ta'alulim, shall rule over them. And Rav Papa Bar Yaakov said ta'alulim means foxes, ta'aleh, the sons of foxes. In other words, inferior people, both in terms of deeds and in terms of lineage. And the prophet Isaiah's mind was not calmed until he said to them, the child shall behave insolently against the aged. Not only will we be ruled over by these ignorant, evil idiots, but they would be insolent toward the people that they were ruling over, the people who were their betters, as it were. Behave insolently. The child Na'ar, these are the people who are devoid of mitzvahs, who will behave insolently toward one who is as filled with mitzvahs as a pomegranate. And the base, nikle, against the honorable, nichbad. This means that one for whom major transgressions are like minor ones, in his mind will come and behave insolently with one for whom even minor transgressions are like major ones in his mind. Again, we would come to be ruled by godless people. The Gemara continues its explanation of this chapter in Isaiah. Rav Katina said, even at the time of Jerusalem's downfall, trustworthy men did not cease to exist among its people. Isaiah said everyone would be removed, right? But they said, well, no, there were trustworthy people among the population, even at the time of Jerusalem's demise at the end of the first temple period, when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple and Jerusalem. Even at the time of Jerusalem's downfall, trustworthy men did not cease to exist among its people, as it is stated, Isaiah 3:6, the next verse. For a man shall take hold of his brother, of the house of his father, and say, you have a cloak, be our ruler. And the Gemara explains that they would approach someone and say to him things that people are careful to keep covered as with a cloak, i.e. words of Torah that are covered and concealed are under your hand, as you are expert with regard to them. So what is the meaning of the end of that verse and this stumbling block? Things that people cannot grasp unless they have stumbled over them, as they can be understood only with much effort, right? We should reach a place of confusion in our studies, realize we're confused, keep digging, and eventually we'll find clarity, right? The things that come easy are not the things most worth knowing. Things that people cannot grasp unless they have stumbled over them, as they can be understood only with much effort, they are under your hand. Although they will approach an individual with these statements, he shall swear that day, saying, I will not be a healer. For in my house there is neither bread nor a cloak. You shall not make me a ruler of a people. Isaiah is saying, yeah, there will be worthy people among the population. You'll try to make them your leaders, but they'll be starving. They won't be able to take on that job. And when the verse states, shall swear, yisa, yisa is none other than an expression of an oath. As it is stated, Exodus 20, verse 6, you shall not take, tisa, the name of the Lord your God, in vain. Therefore, the inhabitant of Jerusalem swears, this worthy one who should be a leader, I will not be a healer, chovesh, which means I was never one of those who sit mechovshe in the study hall, for in my house there is neither bread nor a cloak, as I possess knowledge of neither the Bible nor Mishna nor Gemara, and this shows that even at Jerusalem's lowest spiritual ebb, its inhabitants would admit the truth and own up to their complete ignorance. I was saying it a little bit wrong. They were saying the one quality that they would have in their ignorance is that they would know they were ignorant and admit it. So in other words, the people would come to be ruled by, ignorant, evil idiots who are unworthy of the position, but at least there would be others who were equally ignorant but would admit it and say, no, don't appoint me a ruler. I'm ignorant. And that at least is a worthiness in them, that they know that and don't try to seize the reins of power. The Gemara raises a difficulty, but perhaps it is different there. For if Isaiah had said, I have learned, they would have, or no, if this person, this ignoramus would have said, I have learned, they would have said to him, tell us. And people do not lie about things that cannot be easily verified. And the Gemara rejects this claim. If that person were a liar, he would have said that he learned and forgot, thereby avoiding shame. What is the meaning of I will not be a healer, which seems to imply that he had learned in the past? It means I will not be a healer at all, as I have never learned. Consequently, at least there were people trustworthy in Jerusalem enough to say they were ignorant. The Gemara raises another difficulty. Is that so? But didn't Rava say Jerusalem was not destroyed until trustworthy men ceased to exist in it. As it is stated, Jeremiah 5:1, run to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem and see now and know, realize, and seek in its broad places if you can find a man, if there is any man that acts justly, that seeks truth, and I will pardon her. Almost like God saying, after the negotiation with Abraham about Sodom and Gomorrah, okay, if I find 10 righteous men, I won't destroy it. Jeremiah is saying, you couldn't find even a single righteous man, that the spiritual level of the people had fallen so low by the end of the first temple period. 14b. This case is referring to words of Torah, while that case is referring to commerce. With regard to words of Torah, they were trustworthy enough to say they were ignorant. With regard to commerce, they wouldn't even be honest at all, and they were liars and cheats. And the Gemara returns to the topic of the design of the divine chariot, finally leaving those verses of Isaiah behind. The sages taught an incident occurred involving Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was riding on a donkey and was traveling along the way, and his student, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, not Elazar ben Azariah, Elazar ben Arach, was riding a donkey behind him. Right? So the teacher, Yochanan ben Zakkai, the student, Elazar ben Arach, riding on a donkey behind him. And Rabbi Elazar said to Rabbi Yochanan, my teacher, teach me one chapter of the design of the divine chariot, Merkava mysticism. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, have I not taught you? And one may not expound the design of the divine chariot to an individual unless he is a sage who understands of his own accord. So Rabbi Elazar said to him, my teacher, allow me to say before you one thing that you taught me. In other words, he humbly requested to recite before him his own understanding of the divine chariot. And Rabbi Yochanan said to him, speak. Immediately, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai got down from his donkey and wrapped his head in his cloak in a manner of reverence. And he sat on a stone under an olive tree. Rabbi Elazar said to him, my teacher, for what reason did you get down from the donkey? Rabbi Yochanan said, is it possible that while you are expounding the design of the divine chariot, and the divine presence is with us, and the ministering angels are accompanying us, that I should ride on a donkey? Immediately, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach began to discuss the design of the divine chariot and expounded, and fire descended from heaven and encircled all the trees in the field, and all the trees began reciting song. What song did the trees recite? Psalm 148, one of my favorites. We read it every morning during Pesukah de Zimra, as we prepare to pray, as it were. Psalm 148 talks about how all the creatures in the world, inorganic, animal, human, trees, waves, the sea, the land, the mountains, everything is singing the song of God. I love Psalm 148. What song did the trees sing? Praise the Lord from the earth, sea monsters and all depths, fruit trees and all cedars, praise the Lord. An angel responded from the fire, saying, this is the very design of the divine chariot, just as you expounded. Right? In going into these topics, that the two of them were having a conversation, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the teacher who knows this stuff, and Rabbi Elazar, his student, who has somehow, from the hints that he picked up from his teacher in his own studies, managed to figure out some of these mystical secrets he's now sharing with his teacher, and he got it just right. And fire is surrounding them. The trees are singing, and angels come down and say, yes, you understand something of the upper realms, and what you have said is true. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai stood and kissed Rabbi Elazar ben Arach on his head and said, blessed be God, Lord of Israel, who gave our father Abraham a son like you, who knows how to understand, investigate, and expound the design of the divine chariot. There are some who expound the Torah's verses well, but do not fulfill its imperatives well. And there are some who fulfill its imperatives well, but who do not expound its verses well. Whereas you, Elazar ben Arach, expound its verses well and fulfill its imperatives well, right? You understand Torah and you observe the laws of Torah. You are a complete man. Happy are you, our father Abraham, that Elazar ben Arach came from your loins. The Gemara relates, and when these matters, this story involving his colleague, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, were recounted before Rabbi Yehoshua, he was walking along the way with Rabbi Yosei the priest. And they said, we too shall expound the design of the divine chariot. And Rabbi Yehoshua began expounding. And that was the day of the summer solstice, right? The longest day of the year, when there are no clouds in the sky. And yet the heavens became filled with clouds. And there was the appearance of a kind of a rainbow in a cloud. And ministering angels gathered and came to listen, like people gathering and coming to see the rejoicing of a bridegroom and bride. When the sages speak of these matters on a clear day, not clouds, something like clouds, something like a rainbow. What can I say? If you've ever had some kind of an experience of the divine, this kind of fluid, crystalline, spectral, multi-hued, rainbow-like happened around them, and the angels celebrating what they were reciting. And Rabbi Yosei the priest went and recited these matters before Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, and who said to him, happy are all of you, and happy are the mothers who gave birth to you. Happy are my eyes that saw this, students such as these. As for you and I saw in my dream that we were seated at Mount Sinai, and a divine voice came to us from heaven. Ascend here, for large halls, teraklim, and pleasant couches are made up for you. You, your students, and the students of your students are invited to the third group, those who will merit to welcome the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And the Gemara poses a question, is that so? But isn't it taught in a beraisa? Rabbi Yosei, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, says there are 3 lectures. In other words, there are 3 sages with regard to whom it states that they delivered lectures on the mystical tradition. Rabbi Yehoshua lectured on these matters before Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Akiva lectured before Rabbi Yehoshua. And Hananiah ben Chachinai lectured before Rabbi Akiva. 3 generations, teacher to student. However, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach was not included in the list, despite the testimony that he lectured before Rabban Yochanan. Why was he left out? And the Gemara explains, those who lectured and were also lectured to were included, but those who lectured and were not lectured to were not included. And the Gemara asks, but wasn't there Hananiah ben Chachinai, who was not lectured to, and yet he is included? And the Gemara answers, Hananiah ben Chachinai actually lectured before one who lectured in front of his own rabbi, so he was included in the list. And now we come to this very, very famous story, and we're just at the end of the page, so if questions or comments, get them in. I'm going to take it slow, and this is for those of you who are mystically inclined. The sages taught 4 entered Pardes. Translate as the orchard. The word Pardes is the root of the English word paradise, right? And so that's why when we talk about the Garden of Eden, paradise, we're talking about this otherworldly place which is accessible to some from this world. It's a place in the upper spiritual realms Some people from this world are able to go there. Danger. Dangerous place. 4 entered the orchard, Pardes, meaning they dealt with the loftiest secrets of Torah. And they are as follows: Ben Azai and Ben Zoma, Acher, which means the other, and this refers to Elisha ben Abuye, and Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai and Ben Zoma, great sages who were not operating long enough to receive the title rabbi, and that's why they're called Ben Azai and Ben Zoma, or Shimon ben Azai and Shimon ben Zoma. And Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, the senior among them, said to them, when, upon your arrival in the upper worlds, you reach pure marble stones, do not say water, water, although they appear to be water, because it is stated, he who speaks falsehood shall not be established before my eyes. We have a saying, don't trust your lying eyes. Well, in that upper realm, if you're looking into that world and giving it names and describing and labeling what you're seeing according to your understanding of this finite physical place, you will misunderstand what's going on up there, says Rabbi Akiva. You have to remain totally open and just experience it. Just be there. Don't think you understand. Just take it in. So interesting that he talks about water, water, when you're looking at something that is as solid as marble, so to speak. You might think it's just totally fluid and constantly changing, but it has its own kind of solidity. The Gemara proceeds to relate what happened to each of these 4. Ben Azai glimpsed at the divine presence and died. And with regard to him, the verse states, precious in the eyes of the Lord is the death of his pious ones. A verse we also attribute to Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, who were taken in the wilderness when they came too close to these same realms. Ben Zoma glimpsed at the divine presence and he was harmed, i.e. he lost his mind. And with regard to him, the verse states, have you found honey? Eat as much as is sufficient for you, not more, lest you become full from it and vomit it. Very interesting that it talks about honey. Right? Honey, how do we get it? If it's date honey, okay, not so dangerous that we might be climbing trees for it. If it's bees honey, it's a very dangerous food to procure. Take too much of it, you will harm yourself. Acher, Elisha ben Avuye, who came to be called within the word pages of the Talmud, Acher, the other one. They didn't want to say his name. Acher chopped down the shoots of saplings. Acher chopped down the shoots of saplings. In other words, he became a heretic. Either he chopped the roots of the saplings, meaning his own roots, he severed his own connection to his tradition, or it means that he severed Jews from their tradition. Either way, bad outcome. He became an enemy of the Jewish people. His teachings were corrupted. It's amazing because he eventually came to regret his path, and that's why some of his teachings are preserved. Here in Pirkei Avos, the chapters of the fathers, in chapter 4, right, this is the greatest hits of Jewish wisdom, all of Pirkei Avos, right, the 6 chapters of the fathers. At chapter 4, number 1 is Ben Zoma, right? So Ben Zoma is the one who went crazy. Ben Zoma said, is it more famous than this? Who is wise? He who learns from every person. Who is strong? The one who subdues his evil inclinations. Who is rich? The one who is content with what he has. Who is honored? The one who honors others. That's Ben Zoma. Chapter 4, verse 2 in Pirkei Avos. Ben Azai, the one who lost his life when he ascended to Pardes among these four. What happened to him? I mean, what did he say? Right? With the wisdom that we recount in Ben Azai's name in Pirkei Avos, run to perform even a minor mitzvah and flee from transgression. For one mitzvah brings about another, and one transgression brings about another. For the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and the reward of a transgression is a transgression. He also used to say, do not regard anyone with contempt, and do not reject anything. For there is no man who does not have his hour, and there is no thing which does not have its place. If it exists in God's world, there's a reason for it. Inquire. Don't be arrogant and shower others with your contempt. And Acher, Elisha ben Abuye, who went bad and became an enemy of the Jewish people and helped our enemies persecute us until he finally regretted and realized that he would be cut off and burned in Gehenna, for forever or for a long time, unclear. Even one of his teachings is recorded in Pirkei Avos, chapter 4, verse 20. Elisha ben Avuya said, he who studies Torah as a child, to what can he be compared? To ink written on fresh paper. And he who studies Torah as an old man, to what can he be compared? To ink written on paper that has been erased. A lot of irony and hidden meaning when you know the story of Elisha ben Abuya, that particular bit of wisdom is recorded for him. He came from a very prominent family that were very steeped in Greek learning. And through strange circumstances, unusual circumstances, he became a disciple of the rabbis and a great sage, one of the brightest lights ever. If you ever read the book As a Driven Leaf, it's about him. I think Bee Season is another book about him. He just became so great, and then he started delving into mysticism, and he went so bad. And Rabbi Akiva came out safely. He went in peace, and he emerged in peace. Right? And the word peace, shalom, same word as shalem, whole. Right? W-H-O-L-E. He remained whole. What was it about Rabbi Akiva? Not just his brilliance, not just his big heart, but all the qualities that made Akiva enabled him to ascend there, bathe and learn those mystical secrets and not be harmed by them. Okay, the great Rabbi Akiva could do that. But three other sages who were incredible sages and whose words are recorded in Pirkei Avos. One died, one went crazy, one went bad. Cautionary tale for anybody who would try to plumb the mystical secrets of the universe. We leave off there. What a page. What a day. Okay. Our son is going on a school trip. Nina took him to the airport, so she did not pass questions to me today. Let me scan the comment section here. Seraphim Winslow, do you think it was only the nefesh of Ben Azai that died, since precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints? Do you think it was only the nefesh, the soul of Ben Azai that died? Are you saying that somehow he physically remained alive, but his soul was taken? I would say that is the definition of the divine kiss. That's how we understand what happened to Nadav and Avihu. He died, he expired. But I suspect that it wasn't like he was shriveled up, like his body burnt to a cinder. I think if you were there and you tragically witnessed that death, you would have just seen a man collapse, not known, his soul was in that upper realm, and never came back, is essentially the way I interpret that. PK, you're so nice. We're so fortunate to have Sal instruct us. Thank you. I really try hard. I think, as you can tell, I'm moved and engaged by these teachings, and I just try to share my excitement about it. And Carolyn, honey only sufficient for you reminds me of a reference to the manna. Right, don't take more manna than you need. In fact, no one could take more manna than they could handle, except that double portion on Friday, enough to last them for Friday and Saturday in the wilderness. And manna, for sure, right, is a food that feeds the physical human, but comes directly from heaven, right? So that's one of the interpretations of what was the sin of the spies. Like, they weren't such awful people who came back and brought the report that, well, the promised land's amazing, but it's inhabited by giants who will kill us. And then the people freaked out, and God got so angry and said, this generation's going to die off in the wilderness, and your children will enter the promised land. One interpretation is what the spies were saying is, let's not leave what we've got here so quickly, right? Like, we're a whole population sustained directly by the grace of God, learning the Torah directly from God's prophet Moses, with God's very presence among us. Like, what are we in a rush to end this for? Like, let's just stay here, you know? Which, while their intent might have been worthy, poor decision, bad impact for the people. Let me see. Maybe I'll scan up and come back down. Yosef says, the first time I ever read the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, Ezekiel chapter 1, was what I read. You started with Ezekiel. Exactly, right? And what do you say, Yosef? Ezekiel chapter 1 was what I read, and I've always been interested, but also a little wary that if I delved too far into the mystical, I'd lose my mind. But I'm glad to know what the boundaries are so I can enjoy learning what I never have, right? So, you know, I think a lesson we learn over and over again in these pages, and it continues tomorrow, about the mystical secrets that the sages plumbed is you know, there's some level of this that's going to be accessible to everybody, right? The merest hint. Now, pardes, that's actually, it means paradise, it means the orchard, but it also is an acronym that the Jewish tradition assigns to sort of the way that we learn. P is Peshat, Resh is Pardes, Pe, Resh, Dalid, Shin, right? And what or Samech, right? Samech. And what does it refer to? I just want to double check that. Yeah, Samech, right? And what does it refer to? The Peshat, the plain meaning, the Remez, the hint, the Darash, the inquiry, and the Sod, secret. Meaning that every teaching in Judaism, every verse in the Bible exists on multiple levels. The plain meaning of the text, and Rashi was the undisputed master of expounding the plain meaning of the text. And just to understand the plain meaning of the text, you could study your whole life and not get it. I mean, not get all of it. There's so much to learn just understanding the plain meaning of the text. And like, it's so deep and so amazing that there's like more than enough for a lifetime of study. If you're so inclined, the remez, right? The hint. Oh, wait, there's more going on here. It's connected to other places. The sages are bringing down teachings. The prophets meant things. The judges meant things. The kings. What is really going on here? What was the emotional impact? What was really going on? Can I picture what if I was there when this is happening in the Bible? Right? The inquiry, the darash, right? Go deeper. Go deeper, make connections from one place to another. Understand how one story connects to another. Understand how the laws are not just laws. Like, every law is a channel to access a kind of divine energy and divine presence. And then at the deepest level, you know, really just not available to most, the sod, the secret. But everyone at some point, you know, who takes Torah study seriously has that like, I I never understood that before, right? And like you get that, those flashes of apprehension. Those are the great moments, right? So one of the reasons we do it, in addition to God just told us to turn it over and over and over, for everything is in it. Bill, ruled over by evil idiots? So by prophecy, he got cable news? Sorry, feeling cynical tonight. Other comments that I can scan quickly. I'll just go to the end. And Paula, thank you, excellent class. Guy, thank you, Salanina. Janice, amazing teaching. Ruth, amen, thank you. Paula, you and Nina bring colors to the teachings. Thank you so much. The ultimate compliment. That's what I've got for us today. What a page. What a page, you know. One worth revisiting. And remember, you were there when we learned together Chagigah 14:4 entered the orchard. Keep that page. It comes up so often in Torah study about the 4 that enter the orchard. Now you know, yeah, that's Chagigah 14.